I'm going to be talking about what is new in After Effects, working with motion graphics, working with some of the new 3D tools, and for the first time, After Effects now has a new function for something called responsive design, which is actually comes from something that we've had over in Premiere Pro. It's been brought over to After Effects. There's a lot of new things to show you guys just focused inside of After Effects, so I'm not even going to have time to really jump into a lot of the motion graphic template workflows. Victoria Neese, the product manager for After Effects, is going to be on stage later today, really focused on making motion graphic templates. So if you're a motion graphic designer, you're working with editorial, you need to send motion graphics from After Effects over to Premiere, please definitely come back for Victoria's presentation. But there's just so much inside of After Effects in this release, we needed to do 2 separate sessions to kind of walk through all these different capabilities. The first thing that I want to talk to you about, as we're talking about using smarter tools and being able to do storytelling with smarter tools, we want to be able to utilize 3D much more efficiently inside of After Effects. There's a lot of different ways that you can use 3D information, but we've added, in this next release of After Effects, we have added the ability to do some new interesting things with 3D inside of After Effects. So, just as a quick example here, I'm going to jump over to this composite here. Got a really nice shot, young lady on a skateboard. We want to composite some different elements into the background behind this young woman. Kind of spruce up the shot a little bit. Now, to start with, we've already gone through and done some kind of interesting, she's dealing with audio. She's got her keyboard, her synthesizer that she plays. So we want to start by adding some these wavy lines. And there's a way of tying these via expressions so that this could actually be timed to music if we wanted. Now, this is composited in 3D. It has Z depth associated with it already. So what we need to do is actually use that information. You can see right now, there's no atmospheric effects, there's no fog, there's no depth of field, there's no fall off to this. If I were to just drag this and drop it onto the original composition, like so, it's interesting, but it doesn't really blend well into the scene. This is where we can start to use the new features that deal with depth maps inside of After Effects. So I can go back using this effect. I can just come over here to my effects and presets, and a lot of different effects in this new release will actually grab the depth information, the Z depth information from that nested composition and bring it over into the composition that I'm currently working inside. So to start with, I could use something like 3D channel extract, which is an oldie but a goodie, but you'll notice it's now 32-bit. It's a lot of work has been done to this. So instantly you can see this is now bringing this over as an extraction. I can actually start to see the depth applied to this. It's actually falling off as it moves into the background. We could also start stacking different effects, and just for the sake of time here, I'm going to jump back over to a kind of a baked version of this so that you can see this with a lot of different effects applied to it. Oop, not that one. Let's do this one. And if I start to bring in the various masks and things, this actually has a whole series of different effects, including fog 3D, depth of field, multiple depth maps, and 3D extraction, all coming from the 3D data from the original composition. Just the fact that those wavy lines were composited in 3D space, we can actually start to play with those and start to kind of make things fall off into the background much more naturally in a composite like this. Now you might notice she's now actually in front. She's a front layer to my composite here. We've actually composited this woman, masked her out, made a duplicate copy and masked her out using something called Mocha AE. In past versions of Mocha AE. This is something that's been included with After Effects for a long time, and I used to be able to access it by going to Animation, Track in Mocha, and this would open up a completely different application. And Mocha supported different file formats than what After Effects could support. So sometimes I would have to go through and do a couple extra steps to get over into Mocha and start actually using Mocha. Wonderful planar tracker that is, again, included with every copy of After Effects. This latest release is actually changing how Mocha works so that Mocha operates as a plugin within After Effects. So even though this still opens up in a separate interface, it is actually a plugin in the composition itself. And you can see, I'm not going to go into a full demonstration of how Mocha works. Wonderful, wonderful tool for doing planar tracking, masking. You can see for this particular track, we've actually created a whole series of different masks to get really, really fine edges where we need them within this. I can go through here and I can actually play with this, scrub through this so that you can see those masks in operation. But the end result, all I have to do to move back from Mocha into After Effects is simply go back to After Effects, and you can see here is the tracking data, here is the matte information. I can turn on and see the matte directly inside of After Effects, so I can continue to kind of go back and forth between the two to make additional modifications and changes. So it's a big improvement on the workflow. If you're in After Effects, you can stay in After Effects more. The time it takes to get into Mocha has smoothed out significantly because now this plugin doesn't have to worry about file format, transcoding the files, any type of importing of files. If you can read it in After Effects, it'll read inside the Mocha plugin. Now, the next thing I want to quickly talk about here is talk a little bit about puppets. We made some changes in the spring where we've brought a lot of additional control to working with the puppet tool inside of After Effects. The spring release of After Effects, we've actually created what we call the Advanced Puppet Engine. This took a lot of the benefits that we saw as the puppet tool started in After Effects, moved over into Photoshop, moved into Illustrator. It gained additional features. We have a new tool called Character Animator, which again adds to the way we can deal with puppets. We brought all of that back into After Effects in the spring release. And now for the fall, we're talking about new features where we have additional types of puppets when we want to do character animation. So we've added a number of different new pins, including something called the Puppet Advanced Pin tool, as well as things like the Puppet Bend tool. So by using these different pins, we can create really nice animations that work really, really, it's quick and easy. And these pins have on-screen controls to be able to do things like scale. I can move about. I can add something called a bend pin right here. And again, I have scaling controls. I have move controls. I can go ahead and add another pin here. Let's add an advanced pin at the end here. And so now you'll notice that as I'm moving this, can you see that I've given it control of where that arm is bending at the joint there? It's much more intuitive and natural when I'm actually doing this type of animation work. I'll add another control pin, another advanced pin here. And you can see it just looks like it's simply stretching this out right now. If I come over and I add a bend pin right here, now when I grab this control, you can see that it's actually bending the arm at that control point. And it's designed to be very intuitive, so if I just start to move the head around, you can see how those arms are naturally bending accordingly. So All of these tools together, the puppet tool inside of After Effects has become much more refined, a lot of new tools. If you do character animation within After Effects, definitely check out the new puppet tool. With these new different types of pins, it really makes for a much more elegant and organic way of doing animation. Now, I mentioned something called responsive design, and I want to talk to this a little bit here. With responsive design, the basic idea behind responsive design, here I've got an animation that I've created. This opening section reveals the words "Chase the Clouds." There's a middle section of this that it reveals "Capture the Invisible." And then there's an ending animation that fades everything out. Now, this is great, but this was built at a very precise time of about 5 seconds long. What if I wanted to have this actually work over 20 seconds or 30 seconds in a different comp? We now have the ability to protect areas within our composition and give them names like intro and outro. So you'll notice at the top of the compositions, I have these blue areas here that indicate that this is a protected area within the composition. This animation takes roughly 20 frames, a little bit under a second to animate in. I always want it to be 20 seconds animating in, or 20 frames animating in. The way I create these protected areas is I use something called the work area. You guys have all used the work area at some time inside of After Effects. I'm going to go ahead and create an outro work area here. I'm going to grab the work area and just use it to protect this end animation point here. And I want to make that an outro. So I'm going to select composition, responsive composition time, and you can see here is where I can create intros or outros. I can also have middle areas that are protected. This is different from what's available over in Adobe Premiere. So by creating this as an outro, you can see it's added that blue area to the end here, and the net result of this, if I have something that I'm working on here, I've got a video clip that I'm going to use as a background. All I have to do is drag this, drop it, and directly inside my composition, I can see the protected areas. This means if I start to stretch the duration of this, those areas will stay the same duration even as I stretch this out to animate over a longer period of time. So instead of stretching the keyframes are going to stay fixed, and the areas in between the keyframes are what actually stretch out. So the net result of this, when I play this through, it animates on in the usual amount of time. The next section animates on in the same amount of time. And if I jump to the end here, the whole thing will animate off at the very end. Let me do that with the composition fit there. There we go. There we go. I want to make that longer. Let's have this actually be across this entire duration of this clip. And you can see that these protected areas didn't stretch, they didn't grow bigger or smaller, they stay protected. Now, anytime you do this to a composition inside of Adobe After Effects, if you are building a motion graphic template for Premiere, these same areas will end up as protected areas in the motion graphic template. So the editor will have the ability to take that motion graphic template and stretch it to fit whatever duration they need. And you know that the animated sections are going to look the way they're supposed to look. There's no danger that the animation is going to go too fast or too slow. All right. Let's talk a little bit about making motion graphic templates. Now, I don't want to steal Victoria's thunder, but Victoria Neese, the product manager of After Effects, will be here later. Definitely check the schedule on this, because she is going to be doing an entire section just covering motion graphic templates. But I did want to talk a little bit about some of the new enhancements, the new features of motion graphic templates inside of After Effects. One of the biggest new features that we've been working on, and I'm just going to jump to this here. Let's take this and open it up in the Essential Graphics panel. If you're not using the Essential Graphics panel today, definitely try testing out this panel. So many different things that you can go and use it for. Look up something called Master Properties. This is a feature we introduced in the spring. If you're making motion graphic templates, this is where you build the controls that the editor will have in Premiere. So there's a lot of different uses for this. One of the newest things that we have added, if I have a text layer inside of a composition and I grab the source text and bring it in, I now have the ability to edit what properties are available for the editor. Now, in past versions, there were some really interesting ways of using expressions and using multiple nested comps to give a Premiere editor the ability to switch to different fonts. But we wanted to open this up so that if you're creating a motion graphic template and you want to give the control to the editor to switch out the font at any point in the process, we now have that capability. So I can enable custom font selection. I'm going to also enable font size adjustment. I'm going to enable different faux styles. And when I click OK to this, we now have the ability, when we're making a motion graphic template, if we want. Now, as a motion graphic designer, you may be looking at this going, they're going to switch my font to Comic Sans. No! You always have control as the After Effects artist what goes into this panel. So I can go back and remove the font control if I wanted to. Maybe just give them size adjustments. That's probably that's safe. They can play with the size if they want, but I'm not going to give them any other control other than the size. But we want to give people the flexibility. If you're making a very generic motion graphic template and you want people to be able to use different fonts, you do now have that capability. Just drag and drop the source text layer in here, and you'll have that capability. If you check the custom font selection button, it gives me the same font control that I have over in Adobe Premiere. I can look at favorite fonts. I can use typekit fonts. And again, typekit fonts automatically sync when someone uses this motion graphic template over in Premiere. All right. The other thing that you can also do if you're working with a bunch of different layers of text, and I'm just going to grab the second layer here, bring this one up as well. So I want to be able to group these controls into a common area. We have added the ability to create groups. So I can call this group text and font. And then I can take these source text layers and actually make them part of a group. So as I'm adding a bunch of different controls, I can have twirl up and twirl down menus in this. And once again, when you see Victoria do this, she'll show the other side of this inside of Adobe Premiere. The way you design this panel is what shows up over inside of Premiere when you export this out as a motion graphic template. All right. Really quickly here, I've got 2 more features and I've got 2 more minutes. Yikes. Okay. Another thing that we've been working really closely on is something called data-driven graphics. So with data-driven graphics, I'll go ahead and switch to a different composition here. Oh, and one other thing I just wanted to point out in this release, you might notice that the expressions look just a little bit different than they did before. We have updated the engine for expressions. We're using a modern form of JavaScript for doing the engines. This is an ECMA compliant modern version. The old version of expressions hadn't really been modified or changed since 1999, I think. So this new version actually gives you much more control. There's new functionality for doing expression-driven animations, and it's now a modern form of JavaScript, which actually runs much faster than the older expressions did. So a lot of new improvements dealing with expressions. But the other thing that we have also done is we have created the ability to work with data files directly inside of an After Effects composition. This top layer here is actually a simple CSV file. So standard spreadsheet formats that you can open in, just about any spreadsheet application now can be dragged and dropped into Adobe After Effects and used as the source of different things like text values, color values, position and scale values, rotation values. Just about anything can be stored in a spreadsheet. So if you think about all the different versioning that you may have to do for a particular motion graphic template, you can now have that all driven via Excel, well, sort of Excel spreadsheets. Again, the open standard formats like CSV, TSV. We also support JSON formatted text, and we can pull that up and actually work with it. Now, I even have the ability, if I take this data layer and drag it and drop it up here, I can actually see the spreadsheet data and actually use it as part of the controls inside of the Essential Graphics panel. So there's a lot of new control that's in here. And of course, if I edit or modify the spreadsheet data, the graphics will update inside of After Effects. We've even opened up this capability so it's possible to use a CSV file to drive a motion graphic template, and the Premiere editor can actually go in and look at that data as well or replace it with new up-to-the-minute data. This is a live connection to the spreadsheet. So if the spreadsheet is on the network and a producer is entering names in it while you're working on the design of the lower third, for example, you'll actually see the lower third information update automatically. So pretty cool. If I wanted to take this, let's say I want to take this title layer and I want to link the title layer, the source text of the title layer, to the title field in this. All I have to do is use the pick whip and say link this. Oh, I have to twirl that down. Link this to this, and boom, it updates. So now again, the title is being connected directly to the spreadsheet. The spreadsheet is switching out the text. If I update the spreadsheet, the motion graphic will change out. Whew. Okay, last thing here, and I will be completely out of time. I just quickly wanted to point out, you'll see a lot more of this as we go into Adobe Premiere Pro, but the Lumetri controls for color have gotten a bit of a makeover this time around. We have added selective grading controls inside of the Lumetri effect, and that is in both Premiere Pro and in Adobe After Effects. So when I'm working on a composition inside of After Effects, if I need additional color information, for example, I'll just grab this layer here, go into Effect Controls. The old Curves control has been enhanced with a whole series of different saturation curves, luma versus saturation, saturation versus saturation, selective color controls. I can do things like, grab the green in this to take that tarp and maybe lower that down, grab the color of the dress, flip it around to match the other color of the dress in the shot, making the shot look nicer. All of these selective controls built into the Lumetri effect in both Premiere and After Effects. And if you've ever worked with a flat control like this one is hue versus hue. We're trying to adjust the reds in this shot, and it's going across the boundary, and that gets a little bit tricky to kind of figure out where we're moving to. We've added this little adjuster here, which allows me to put that in the center. So whatever color I happen to be working on, I can get it right in the center as I'm working with it. So if you've used this in other applications, when you hit the edges, the boundary, it can be a little bit more difficult to work with. Now I have a nice and easy way to see what's going on. All right, just a small taste of what's inside of After Effects in this release. There's a lot more. Definitely go see the person on the pod in the back. I'm going to wrap things up for now. My name's Carl Soule. Thank you guys so much.